Now, the president's vice president, Andrew Johnson, who's a Southerner, he's the only Southern senator to not leave, he takes over. Now, there's two things about him that change how Reconstruction works. First of all, he is from the South. He is a racist. He does not want the freed slave to get power. Second, he does, because of his leaving, staying with the Union, and everybody else leaving and things, he didn't get along with a lot of the power guys, the landowners in the South. So this is going to be an issue. All right, so they don't take any land from any of those people, and from any of the landowners, and you wind up kind of getting a weird form. It's called sharecropping. So those guys would actually give out seed, cotton seed and tools and things like that to people to work their land, and then they would give them a share of the crop, which is usually 1/3. Usually what would happen is the sharecroppers would make just enough to barely get by. They'd often be in debt, to their owner, to the landowner, and it was kind of a weird little serfdom. It's like an indentured servant kind of thing. So it was a way that, I'll tell you, by the early 1900s, most sharecroppers were actually white, right? It became a poor white thing too. So the landowners, though, those guys that had plantations, they're still making a killing. All right, so you get radical Republicans in Congress. They passed the Reconstruction amendments, I guess 13, 14, and 15. 13 ends slavery in the United States. 14 gives them citizenship rights. It gives citizenship rights to the freed slaves, and 15 gives them the vote. So you couldn't stop somebody from voting because of their race, but of their gender or something like that. Yeah, so women still can't vote, but they made the freed slaves allowed to vote. All right, so this would be kind of the way it would go for a little bit in the South until the Democrats, who were the Confederate supporters, take over again. Right? They get control, and they wind up in control of the South. They start these things called Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws would be in effect in one way or another till the 1960s. Like segregation, whites only bathrooms, things like that, and that was kind of a big thing in the South. They also, to keep them from voting, they would go through all sorts of things. There was at one point they had a poll tax, and when you went to go to a poll where you'd vote, you had to pay a tax. Well, a lot of these, freed slaves had no money; they couldn't do it. Or you had literacy tests. If you couldn't read, you couldn't vote. Well, these guys, when they were slaves, it was illegal to teach them. You had grandfather clauses. If your grandfather could vote, you could vote. Well, if your grandfather's a slave, he couldn't vote. So this kind of stuff would linger on. A lot of the stuff when we talk about Martin Luther King Jr. and segregation and civil rights, a lot of this stuff starts with the Civil War and Reconstruction. So it's kind of weird to think about it, but this stuff over 100 years later still plays a part in our lives. Anyway, I guess that's all I'm going to tell you. So I hope you guys are staying home, staying healthy, and remember, wash your hands.